Okay, so welcome everyone. We'll get started with the regular council meeting for Monday, April 22nd, and we are resuming from an in-camera session that was held earlier today. So we will move on to the third item on the agenda, which is O Canada. So I'll ask everyone to stand if you're able.
O Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all of us command.
Car ton bras s'est porté l'épée, il s'est porté la croix. Ton histoire est une épopée.
Okay, thank you everyone. So, next item on our agenda will be the roll call of councillors. So over to you, CAO McCulloch.
Thank you, Madam Warden. District 1, Deputy Warden Sean Sampson. Present. Thank you. District 2, Councillor Michael Digdon. Present. Thank you. District 3, Councillor Melanie Sampson.
Present.
Thank you. And District 4, Warden Amanda Mumbercat.
Present. Thank you, Troy. All right, the next item would be items added to the agenda. So are there any items from councillors?
Madam Warden, oh, sorry. Maybe just one, maybe if we can have a quick discussion on the streetlights.
Okay. Certainly, I'm going to add streetlights as item 12 to the agenda. And I won't add as an agenda item, but certainly want to acknowledge that today is Earth Day, which is celebrated internationally. And I know there's been a lot of great work going on with community cleanups in the county. And just want to do a special shout out to the volunteers who are making an effort. And although it's disheartening that we continue need to do these things, it is wonderful to have people who are willing to step up and get that piece of work done. So thank you to those of you who were busy at it this weekend and today. And in the days to come, I guess I should say as well. All right, so we'll move on then and ask for an approval of the agenda if there's no other items to add.
I'll move the approval of the agenda.
Thank you, Councillor Sampson. Could I have a seconder, please?
I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Deputy Warden. Any further discussion on the agenda? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? All right, that motion is carried. The next item on the agenda is the review of the minutes. We have two sets for this evening's consideration. The first are the public hearing meeting minutes from March 25th, 2024. And I'll ask for a mover and a seconder on those minutes, please, if there's no errors or omissions.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Councillor Digdon. Can I have a seconder?
I'll second that motion.
Thanks, Deputy Warden. Any further discussion on the public hearing minutes from March 25th? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? That motion is carried. The next are the regular council meeting minutes from March 25th, 2024. So I'll ask for a motion and a seconder.
I'll move the approval of the minutes.
Thank you, Councillor Melanie Sampson. Could I have a seconder, please?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Councillor Digdon. Any further discussion on the minutes? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? All right, that motion is carried. Okay, so the next item is a warm welcome to John McNeil with Grant Thornton, who is here to present who is here to present our financial statements for the year ending March 31st, 2023. So welcome back, John. Nice to see you. Thank you. And we'll just, as you're moving through your presentation, we'll just get you to press the red button on your mic so folks who are watching at home can hear you. So.
Okay, thank you. As the warden said, I'm John McNeil. I'm an audit partner with Grant Thornton, and very pleased to be here tonight, and thank you again for the opportunity to look after the audit. I'll keep my comments fairly short, but please stop me if there's any questions I'm going through, because I think at this point everything is relatively straightforward and consistent with where we would have been in the previous years. At this point, our audit work is complete. The statements that you have in front of you are draft financial statements, but the only reason they're draft is just because they require the approval of council at this point. So that's the last piece of the audit work. We have reviewed the statement in detail with the audit committee, addressed any questions they had, and go through in quite a bit of detail with the audit committee. And that was done on April 10th. And as well, I guess, with the audit complete, the financial indicators report has been done and submitted as well on April 3rd. Our audit report is unqualified, so everything we've looked for in the audit, the scope of our examination, we were giving everything that we were looking for and got appropriate answers to everything, so it's an unqualified, clean audit opinion. The statement that I'm actually presenting today, although you might have the individual entity statements, is the consolidated statement. So with a consolidated statement, what that means is that's a combination of every entity that council are responsible for. So in this case, that's the water and housing, the general fund, any of the reserves, your proportionate share of the planning commission and Landry Lake. So that would all be wrapped into one financial statement as the consolidated statement. So I think I'll have some comments afterwards, but what I planned on doing is just going through the main sections of the statement. So page 4 of the financial statement is the statement of financial position. So just in terms of some of the highlights there, what you'll see year over year is your financial assets, your cash and your receivables are very similar to last year. Strong cash.
Are you flipping on your screen or, sorry?
Shelley, do you want to share it?
I can share here. I thought that everybody had copies, but
Yeah, we just have folks watching at home as well.
how do I share here? Is it easy?
It's live right now.
Yeah. So you
Oh.
just need to scroll to the
So if I scroll, okay,
Yeah.
fine. Okay, so I'm going through, I guess, just to comment, the audit report is there included in the statement, which is an unqualified audit report. And looking at the consolidated statement of financial position would be a snapshot of where the county's finances were at that date. So just is that a little better? Okay. Okay. I can probably, yes, okay. So again, as a consolidated statement, it's wrapping up the operations of everything the council is responsible for. So what you'd see is a strong cash position similar to where you would have been last year. Receivables, which would be tax receivables, those types of things, government programming that you'd be receiving. Balance is very consistent with the previous year. So that's your financial assets. In terms of liabilities at that point, again, everything is very consistent with where you would have been in the previous year. Payables and accruals. It would just be trade payables, those types of things that each of the entities would owe. The retirement benefit is the defined benefit pension plan. That has gone down from the previous year, both as a combination of plan performance and also a reducing obligation as in the plan. Sick leave benefits are very similar to where they were. The asset retirement obligation, I'll just make a note there, that's new this year. That's a new accounting standard that the municipality is required to provide for the cost of any remediation of assets. So in your case, you've had an engineering study to look at all county assets, buildings, see what might be there in eventual remediation. The liability is very similar to where it would have been last year under the old standards for landfills, but the number on the financial statement there is primarily landfill remediation would be the biggest thing. Other liabilities, the biggest change there is just deferred revenue. So it's primarily like gas tax revenue that was received in advance and at this point not spent is the change there. And the long-term debt has gone from 7.2 million to 5.4 million. That's really just a factor of you paying down your debt with very little additions to the debt during the year. So the net financial, a key indicator for us would be the net financial assets, which is looking at what your financial liabilities are compared to your financial assets. That would have been a deficit or a debt of $888,000 last year. That's a positive number of $706,000 this year. So very positive that your net debt is actually a net asset position, which reflects the strong financial position of the municipality. The non-financial assets are below, which is primarily your fixed assets, whether that's buildings, streets, sewage, those types of things that the municipality would have. That number really hasn't changed much. There's been some additions during the year, but then that number would also be depreciated with use, but very similar to where you were last year. So an accumulated surplus going from $33 million last year to $34,300,000 this year. So, when I referred earlier to the submission of the financial indication report, those types of things, they also reflect this position that everything is positive and improving in terms of your financial indicators, and a very positive year with a growing surplus. Just turning to the next page or scrolling down to the next page is your consolidated statement of operations. So again, just to reiterate that this is all of the entities under the county jurisdiction. So looking at that, you're seeing your tax revenues go up, which is primarily what was planned in the budget with some rate increases and changes there. Most of the other revenue amounts are very consistent with where they'd be expected to be. We're seeing the housing corp operations increase. That's primarily just increasing revenues there, which are offset by increasing expenses. Water rates are very consistent with where you were. Your own source revenue is up from $800,000 to $1.2 million. That's primarily investment returns on the various reserve funds and the cash that you're holding, just with interest rates increasing. And capital contributions are very similar. And there's a small there, if anybody there was other revenue last year. That was just a small gain, and as well as some like COVID, the end of some COVID funding flowing into restart programs. So looking at total revenues going from $23 million to $25 million, and that's compared to a budget number of $22 million. So again, a very strong year from a revenue perspective. Looking at the expenses are essentially consistent with what was budgeted or expectations through the year, and very similar to where you would have been last year, both in terms of the amounts and the trends. So looking at general government services going from 3.8 to 4 million, protective services increasing some, but just again with normal inflationary increases is all that was really expected there. Nothing stood out. Health and development services, really, that's primarily the housing increased. That's just really offset by wage increases and things happening within Richmond County Housing. Recreation and culture was some additional grants, and the recreation master plan was in there this year. And really the other expenses, or as a group there, you're very similar to where you were last year and consistent with the increase that was expected in the budget. So a surplus this year of $1.3 million compared to a budgeted surplus of $100,000 and a prior year of $2.7. The numbers this year also would include the accretion expense related to the asset retirement obligation. So as that obligation's taken into revenue, or taken into the income statement each year as it increases, that does get reflected in your expenses. So that's in there as well under your health and development services, which is some of the increase there. So just looking at the accumulated surplus from year to year, I just wanted to highlight that you'll see an adjustment to your surplus. That is for the adoption of the asset retirement obligation standards. And the final page that I want to highlight that would look at as an indicator is just your cash flow statement, which shows the change in your cash from year to year. And and what's happened there on a cash basis. So what you're seeing is you're generating cash through a surplus. There are non-cash items, which would be the amortization of your tangible assets. So that was 1.3 million. And there's some accretion expense related to the ARO standard there. So from your operations, you've generated 2.8 million in cash, and then that's gone into supporting your current working capital position. It's gone towards the purchase of capital assets of a little over 1 million, 1,078,000. And then in terms of your long-term debt, you'd see there you've issued long-term debt of only 147,000 during the year, but you've repaid long-term debt during the year of 1.9 million, almost 2 million. So that's the change in your cash and your debt. So you've increased your cash surplus this year, or your cash position by almost 1.4 million, to be ending the year at 15,700,000 in cash. So in terms of what I was going to present, that's really the key from my perspective is the financial position and where you stood there. I'm not going to go through the notes of the statement in detail, but if there's questions as you've reviewed them, just let me know.
Thank you, John. So first of all, I just want to say a huge thank you to Grant Thornton for working with our team here. And I know that team has been very much Jason and Kathleen, and they've worked really hard and the whole financial team, they've worked really hard to get these statements together with the ARO obligations coming into play. So I know it's been a journey. I also want to say a huge thank you to Paula Jesty, who is our community member at large on our audit committee and has brought an incredible amount of talent and know-how to that table, asking questions that I couldn't have dreamt of. So thank you, Paula. I know you're watching at home. Much appreciated. Any questions for John on the statements themselves, or... Yeah, go ahead, Cal.
I don't have a question about the statements, but we are aware of what the ARO changes were this year. I'm just wondering, John, if you could, just for the folks at home who are probably sitting there wondering why we're reviewing financial statements as another fiscal year has come and gone, and I think it would be important to give them a little bit of information in terms of what took so long this year, like what were the changes that happened and why there was a delay for financials.
That's it. That's a really good question. I think it's important to address that. Just in terms of the process, and I know you mentioned your team, we've received the full cooperation of your team and had things done. So the majority of our audit work was probably completed working with your group in June, July, that period. So it's been done for a while. The accounting standards changed this year to introduce the asset retirement obligation, which is as I kind of stated earlier, is looking at all of the assets that the municipality would own and looking to see if there's remediation costs associated with that. So clearly one of them would be landfill sites, but also it could be derelict buildings, it could be like asbestos, those types of things. And what the standard is looking to do is bring that into the municipality's financial statements so that it's reflected as a liability. What it does is it looks and says that might not happen for 10 years, so it looks at the cost of what that remediation is estimated to be and then brings it back to today's dollars. And then over each year in the financial statements, we would increase the liability, so in 10 years that provision would be there in the municipality statements. But that work did require an engineering study of all of your physical assets, your tangible assets. And I think with that happening to every municipality, every basically government organization at the same time, the engineering firms were behind with that. So we really didn't receive that full ARO report until January or February, somewhere in there, and then a chance to kind of finalize the statement. So that did delay the financial statement this year. We would expect to be back on a normal timing for next year, because that ARO report would not be a full engineering report every year. It would only be if there's any changes, and we might consult with the engineer just to see if there's been significant changes to estimates. But we wouldn't expect that would be anything that would delay us in the future. So we'd be back to a delivery point of somewhere between June to September, which would be the normal timeline with council.
Thank you, Melanie. That was an important question to have addressed for sure. Any other questions for John? Okay, so I guess at this point, are we looking to make a motion to approve those financial statements so that we can dot the I and cross the T? Oh, sorry, Councillor Melanie? Oh, it's in the audit committee report. You're right, we've got it covered there. No, you're correct. It is in
Later
there.
on the agenda.
Yeah, got it. I think that was even maybe my idea, so there you go. Okay. So thank you very much, John, for coming in.
And like I said earlier, it's an easy statement to present. Thank you. As I said earlier, it's an easy statement to present. It's very consistent with your budget in previous years and a strong financial position, so congratulations to council on that. Thank you.
Pleasure. All right. Okay. All right, so, so at this time, we'll move into question period, which will be restricted to items on the committee reports. And there are a variety of committee reports this evening. So we have a Committee of the Whole report, Accessibility Advisory Committee, the Audit Committee, Planning Advisory and Heritage Committee report, as well as Fire Services Committee. So if there are questions related to any of the content on those committees, committee reports, welcome folks to come to the mic if you're in the gallery, or if you're calling in from home, the phone number to call is 902-226-9885. That's 226-9885. So we'll just give that a minute to see if there are any questions rolling in. All right, so I'm not hearing the phone ring, and no folks at the table to ask questions. So at this time, I will move on to committee reports, and we'll begin with the Committee of the Whole report, and I'll hand things over to Deputy Warden, if you wouldn't mind.
Thank you, Madam Warden. So, Committee of the Whole report for April 2024. The committee met on April 8th, 2024. The committee discussed the open tender competition for PID number 75142133. I move that council accept the recommendation from the Committee of the Whole to accept the recommendation from staff to sell property PID number 75142133 to the highest bidder as a result of the open tender competition.
Thank you, Deputy Warden. Could I have a seconder, please?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Councillor Melanie Sampson. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion carried.
The committee discussed the additional professional financial services. I move that council accept the recommendation from the Committee of the Whole to empower the CEO to engage additional professional financial services and to include such cost in the 2024-2025 budget.
Thank you, Deputy Warden. Could I have a seconder, please?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Councillor Digdon. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion is carried.
The committee discussed the municipal growth framework resolution. I move that council accept the recommendation from the Committee of the Whole to support the municipal growth framework resolution.
Thank you, Deputy Warden. Could I have a seconder, please?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Councillor Digdon. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? That motion is carried.
The committee discussed the 2024 heavy collection. I move that council accept the recommendation from the Committee of the Whole to proceed with the 2024 heavy collection at an estimated cost of $160,000, with the funds to be allocated in the 2024-2025 budget.
Thank you, Deputy Warden. Could I have a seconder, please?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Councillor Melanie Sampson. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion is carried.
The committee discussed the Village of St. Peter's guarantee request. I move that council accept the recommendation from the Committee of the Whole to provide a guarantee for the Village of St. Peter's for the purpose of borrowing to convert their balloon payment into a new 5-year debenture in the amount of $497,300.
Thank you, Deputy Warden. Could I have a seconder, please?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Councillor Mike Digdon. Any further discussion on that item? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? That motion is carried.
The committee discussed the grant request for the River Bourgeois Mariner Society for the Type 4 Regional Health General Grant Fund in the amount of $10,000. I move that council accept the recommendation from the Committee of the Whole to approve the grant request from the River Bourgeois Mariner Society for the Type 4 Regional Health General Grant Fund in the amount of $10,000, and it be allocated from the CCBF Waterfront Development Funds, subject to assessment by staff as to the project's eligibility.
Thank you, Deputy Warden. And I do believe the CAO has an update for us on that, but I'll ask for a seconder so we can move it to discussion.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Councillor Melanie Sampson. Any further discussion? Over to you, CAO.
Thank you, Madam Warden. We did hear from the folks at Municipal Affairs today that after review, they do believe that it would meet the basic eligibility under the CCBF. So all they are waiting for now is the resolution from you folks tonight.
Right on. Okay, thanks, folks. Any further discussion or questions for the CAO on that? All right, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? That motion is carried.
The committee discussed the Richmond County Literacy Network Type 4 Regional Health General Grant Fund request. I move that council accept the recommendation from the Committee of the Whole to amend the previously adopted motion made on March 11, 2024 for the Richmond County Literacy Network Type 4 Regional Health General Grant request from the original ask to $2,600, and further move that the funds be allocated from the 2023-2024 budget as follows. District 1 funds, $500. District 3 funds, $600. District 4 funds, $1,000. And District 5 funds, $500.
Thank you, Deputy Warden. Could I have a seconder, please?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Councillor Digdon. Any further discussion on this item? All right, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? That motion is carried.
The committee discussed the request from Kieran Walker to have a Gaelic, Nova Scotia month flag raising and proclamation ceremony. I move that council accept the recommendation from the Committee of the Whole to have staff organize the Gaelic, Nova Scotia month flag raising and proclamation ceremony for a date in May, and further move that staff advertise an invitation to members of the public in local media.
Thank you, Deputy Warden. Could I have a seconder on that?
I'll second.
Thank you, Councillor Melanie Sampson. She beat you to the punch on that one. Councillor Digdon, any further discussion on the Gaelic Nova Scotia month flag raising? All those in favor, please say aye. 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 Those opposed? All right, that motion is carried, and we'll be reading that proclamation at the ceremony, which I think we have planned for May 1st, 3rd? We're going to publicize that, so yes. All right, thank you. Over to you, Deputy Warden.
The committee discussed the Richmond Education Center Academy request for monetary contributions to the Graduation Bursary Scholarship Fund. I move that council accept the recommendation from the Committee of the Whole to defer the request to contribute to the Richmond Education Center Academy Bursary Scholarship Fund to budget deliberations.
Thanks, Deputy Warden. Could I have a seconder, please?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Councillor Digdon. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? That motion is carried.
The committee discussed the request from Cindy Walker to participate in the Tourism Nova Scotia Emerging Destinations Program. I move that council accept the recommendation from the Committee of the Whole to have staff connect with Cindy Walker to explore the program to see if there are opportunities to participate.
Thanks, Deputy Warden. Could I have a seconder on that item?
I'll second that.
You, Councillor Digdon, has seconded the motion. Any further discussion on this item? I guess just maybe a quick question for you, CAO McCulloch, is I know there was a real tight deadline on that. If, maybe it's not a question, but if there's anything we can do to support that, if there's some need to gather some folks from the community or whatever, happy to help with that. So, okay. Cool. All right. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? That motion is carried.
The committee discussed the grant request from the River Bourgeois Community Services for the Type Tree Recreation Sponsorship Grant Fund in the amount of $500. It was the consensus of the Committee of the Whole to table the River Bourgeois Community Service grant request for the Type Tree Recreation Sponsorship Grant Fund in the amount of $500 to the next Committee of the Whole meeting.
Okay, so could I have a seconder on that? Or I guess. Okay, do you over to you if you had a question, or, yeah?
I hit the button early.
Oh, okay, you go ahead, over to you,
I was
Melanie.
going to second it,
Oh,
but
yeah.
we're not ready for that. Are we?
Yeah, I think we're ready.
All right, I'm going to second it.
All right, thank you, Councillor Melanie Sampson. Any further discussion? Yeah,
My recollection was that we were going to hold it over until the Committee of the Whole following some work on the budget. So I just wonder if maybe it should be amended to say that it would be included in the next council meeting following the budget discussion related to this item.
suggesting a friendly amendment to that motion to just qualify it by saying following the budget discussion related to grants and contributions. Yeah. Is everybody okay with that? Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. 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 Those opposed? That motion is carried. Great.
This concludes the Committee of the Whole report for the month of April 2024, and I move its adoption.
Thank you, Deputy Warden. Could I have a seconder on the Committee of the Whole report?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Councillor Digdon. Any further discussion on the Committee of the Whole report? It was a busy one. All those in favor, please say aye. 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 Those opposed? All right, that motion is carried. So, next item on the agenda is the Accessibility Advisory Committee, and I'm going to ask Deputy Warden to go through and read the Accessibility Advisory Committee report, please, and thank you.
Accessibility Advisory Committee report. The committee discussed the flag raising and proclamation event for Access Awareness Week 2024. I move that the municipality of the County of Richmond host a flag raising and proclamation event on May 27, 2024 for the Access Awareness Week.
Could I have a seconder on that?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Councillor Digdon. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. 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 Those opposed? That motion is carried.
This concludes the Accessibility Advisory Committee report for the month of April 2024, and I move its adoption.
Thank you, Deputy Warden. Could I have a seconder?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Councillor Melanie Sampson. Any further discussion? We do have a proclamation that was included in the package, and so we'll be reading that at our events as well. And just want to say a special shout out to the staff for doing a great job of pulling all that together. And Shannon, Danielle, you guys have been working really hard on that. So thank you very much. Okay. All those in favor, please say aye. 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 Those opposed? The motion is carried. So the next item on the agenda is the Audit Committee report. So I'm going to hand things over to Councillor Melanie Sampson.
Thank you. This is the Audit Committee report for April 2024. The committee met on April 10th, 2024. The committee discussed the appointment of auditors. I move that Council accept the recommendation from the Audit Committee to appoint Grant Thornton as the auditors for the March 31st, 2024 fiscal year end.
Could I have a seconder on that motion, please?
I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Deputy Warden. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? That motion is carried.
The committee discussed the presentation of financial statements. I move that Council accept the recommendation from the Audit Committee to accept the financial statements of the municipality for the year ended March 31st, 2023, with the non-substantive amendments as discussed.
Oh, I don't think your button was lit on that one. If
I will read it again. Yes. Try that again. I really want you to approve the financials. The committee discussed the presentation of financial statements. I move that council accept the recommendation from the audit committee to accept the financial statements of the municipality for the year ended March 31st, 2023, with the non-substantive amendments as discussed.
Thank you, Councillor Sampson. Could I have a seconder on that?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Councillor Digdon. Any further discussion on the financial statements? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? That motion is carried.
This concludes the audit committee report for the month of April 2024, and I move its adoption.
Thank you, Councillor Sampson. Could I have a seconder, please?
I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Deputy Warden. Any further discussion on the audit committee report? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion is carried. Okay, so the next item on the agenda, it's report night here at regular council. The next item on the agenda is the Planning Advisory and Heritage Committee report, which is a committee that is chaired by Councillor Brent Sampson, but he wasn't able to be here with us this evening, so I'm going to ask Councillor Melanie Sampson to go through the report for us. Thank you.
This is the Planning Advisory Heritage Committee report for the month of April 2024. The committee met on April 16th, 2024. The committee discussed the variance notification procedures. I move that council accept the recommendation from the Planning Advisory Heritage Committee to have staff review the land use bylaws to determine if an extension on the time frame for appeals can be extended from 14 to 21 days, and further move to prepare amending pages.
Thank you, Councillor. Could I have a seconder, please?
I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Councillor Digdon. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion is carried.
The committee almost forgot again. The committee discussed the Richmond County subdivision bylaw. I move that council accept the recommendation from the Planning Advisory Heritage Committee to have staff prepare amending pages to the Richmond County subdivision bylaw for the purpose of removing the term clearly survey and further clarify that the use of an easement, new or existing, will require a survey.
Thank you, Councillor Sampson. Could I have a seconder on that, please?
I'll second that motion.
Any further discussion on that item? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye. 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 Those opposed? Nay vote from Councillor Digdon. We can put that on the record. All those, sorry. That motion is carried. I'm starting to repeat myself. And I'm forgetting to press my button too, so that motion is carried. All right, back to you, Councillor Sampson.
The committee discussed the building permits and fees. I move that council accept the recommendation from the Planning Advisory Heritage Committee to have staff amend Bylaw 61, building permits and fees, for the purpose of updating the fee structure as presented by the Eastern District Planning Commission.
Thank you, Councillor Sampson. Could I have a seconder on that item?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Councillor Digdon. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? That motion is carried.
This concludes the Planning Advisory Heritage Committee report for the month of April 2024, and I move its adoption.
Thank you, Councillor Melanie Sampson. Could I have a seconder on that?
I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Deputy Warden. Any further discussion on the Planning Advisory and Heritage Committee report? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? That motion is carried. Okay, so the next item, thank you, Councillor Sampson. The next item on our agenda is the Fire Services Committee report. And for this one, I'm going to ask Councillor Mike Digdon to take us through the motions associated with the report.
Fire Protection Services Committee Report, April 2024. The committee last met on March 27th, 2024. The committee discussed dry hydrant installation. The Fire Protection Services Committee, FPSC, recommends that Council review the submission from the St. Peters Volunteer Fire Department for the approval of $5,000 for the installation of their dry hydrant. I move that Council review the submission from the St. Peters Volunteer Fire Department for the approval of $5,000 for the installation of their dry hydrant at the next Committee of the Whole with our Emergency Service Coordinator.
Thank you, Councillor Digdon. Could I have a seconder on that motion?
I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Deputy Warden. Any further discussion?
Hi. Okay, so we also received the minutes from that meeting, so there was some context to this conversation, to this motion. But I'm just perhaps looking for, I believe Councillor Digdon was at the meeting, just a little more information. So my understanding, St. Peters Volunteer Fire Department installed a dry hydrant, but their application for funds under the grant was declined because they didn't follow the policy. And they're now looking for us to make an exception to the procedures, if you will, to approve their grant. Is that accurate?
Yeah, so I guess I'll speak on that as best I can. So they went ahead and they had an engineer design the system kind of on their own. Because the fire services doesn't meet that often, they felt that they wanted to move ahead quicker, so they built a road, created their own, they got an engineer to design it, put in their own dry hydrant. To them, it was supposedly a cost of, I think it's between almost $30,000 or something. And they're just looking to, I guess, get some of the money back. They felt that regardless if they followed the procedure or not, they still went according to or followed the policy, they still went according to procedure and had an engineer design and the whole, as opposed to getting our engineer to reach out and get an engineer design. So they just wanted to know if they could, I guess, get.
If I may be able to help there, Madam Warden, and through you to council. The staff report that'll be coming to Committee of the Whole will be spelling out the steps that were missed in this process, and we'll lay it all out for council's consideration at that time. But we'll gather all the facts and put it in front of you for the May Committee of the Whole.
Great. Yeah,
So I'm just wondering if the wording of the motion, maybe, because to me, this motion was that we would, yeah, I guess. Maybe to me, it should just say that they would review it at the next Committee of the Whole meeting, as opposed to review it, because it almost felt like we were going to be approving the $5,000 without the rest of the information. Okay. So as long as that's the understanding, then that makes sense to me.
We can make an adjustment though, so that we do make sure that that is the understanding. Because when you do read it, it looks like Fire Department for the approval of $5,000 for.
Yeah. Sorry, you weren't on. I'm still lit up, but.
So I'm just going to interject. Yeah, so councillors, I picked up the same issue in the wording and had a chat with the CAO about it just before the meeting. But I think the key is that the motion is worded that council is agreeing to review the submission that was requesting approval for the $5,000. So that's how the motion is. When you read, when you really look at it closely, that's how it's worded. And so I think, as long as we all understand the spirit, that's what's going to happen. And I guess the only thing I would add on that is, if we review this, and consider an exception, I guess I would just say too, like, if there are changes that need to be made to the policy itself to make sure that, that we're delivering on the spirit of having the policy developed in the first place, I'd be totally open to hearing those kinds of changes, if there changes are required. Okay, so it's been moved then that council review the submission. Did hear a seconder on that one. It was you? Okay, thank you, Councillor Melanie Sampson, for seconding it. Is there any further discussion? All right, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? That motion is carried.
The committee discussed the fire service review document. The FPSC recommends that council review the 2019 fire service review and recommendations submitted by Goodralt Associations. I move that council review the 2019 fire service review and recommendations submitted by Goodralt Associations at the next committee of the whole with our emergency service coordinator.
Thank you, Councillor Digdon. Could I have a seconder on that item?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Councillor Melanie Sampson. Any further discussion?
I hate to be, again, okay, so again, when I compared that to what was in the minutes, again, I certainly have no problem and think it's appropriate for the emergency services coordinator to be part of this review. However, that was not the motion that was made at their meeting. So the motion that was made at their meeting was that to have a recommendation brought before council to review the fire services review and recommendations presented by Goodralt Associates. I agree that he should be there. I guess that's the point. So I don't know that it changes the spirit of what is there, but if the purpose of the report is to bring forward the motions, it's not the same.
Yeah, the wording is a little different, and I didn't attend the meeting, so I can't really speak to the intent. But was the intent, Councillor Digdon, for the emergencies management coordinator to be part of that discussion? Can you recall?
I don't want to speak for Steve, but I believe the intent was that he was going to be at our next meeting.
Okay.
Again, maybe we can just yeah. I guess maybe we can have our CAO reach out, and he'll be at the next meeting for discussion on the dry hydrant issue anyway.
I think at the end of the day, it would be a difficult, it would be a difficult report to kind of, and I know we've all dug into it, already, but to do so without the EMC would, I think, be unwise. So, but good point, Councillor Sampson. Is there any other discussion on that? Are we okay with keeping the motion intact? Okay. Yep. Any further discussion? All right. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? That motion is carried.
This concludes the report for the Fire Protection Services Committee for April 2024, and I move its adoption.
Thank you, Councillor Digdon. Is there any discussion, or can I have a seconder?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Councillor Melanie Sampson. Is there any discussion on the Fire Services Committee report? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye. 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 Those opposed? That motion is carried. All right, the next item on the agenda. So thank you, folks, for assisting with that on the reports. It's been a busy month. So the next item on the agenda is correspondence, and we do have one item, action required from Donna Lugar, and Donna is with the Nova Scotia Lyme Advocacy Group, and has sent this message through to us regarding Lyme Disease Awareness Month, which is something that we have typically, proclaimed in the past. This year it's May 2024, and she has provided a draft proclamation as well as a petition regarding tick-borne diseases in Nova Scotia, seeking for government to increase education, to develop a dedicated tick-borne diseases care clinic, and to form a nonpartisan task force, including those with lived experience. So a little bit of a more robust ask this year than what we have seen in previous years. And so at this point would be looking for a motion from council to proclaim the month of May as Lyme Disease Awareness Month, and for your thoughts on potentially supporting the petition. So I'll open that for discussion at this point. I would love some discussion. Yeah.
So while your computer's waking up, I think supporting it as the awareness month is great. I'm not sure with the petition how much they want us, how much time or manpower they're looking at.
Perhaps we could, share the petition on social media. If folks are interested, they could, would councillors be okay with that approach? And then can leave it to individuals' choice to choose to participate. Okay. So if I could get a motion then on proclaiming the month of May as Lyme Disease Awareness Month.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Councillor Mike Digdon. Could I have a seconder, please?
I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Deputy Warden has seconded the motion. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? All right, that motion is carried. So I will just read it really quickly because this will be our point in time for publicizing the proclamation. So Lyme Disease Awareness Month for May 2024, whereas Lyme disease is a serious illness caused by the bite of a black-legged tick infected with the bacterium Borrelia burgdorferi, and I should have practiced this. It comes up every year, and I'm not good at saying it yet, sorry. And whereas black-legged ticks carrying a variety of diseases or illnesses can now be found in all parts of Nova Scotia, and whereas awareness, education, and practicing preventative measures, such as daily tick checks and proper tick removal, can help reduce your chances of contracting tick-borne diseases, therefore be it resolved that I, Warden Amanda Mumbercat, on behalf of Richmond Municipal Council, do hereby proclaim May 2024 as Lyme Disease Awareness Month. So we'll pop that proclamation onto our website and be sure to let Donna know, I guess, that the proclamation is passed. So, all right. So the next item on the agenda is for information purposes only, and it is from the Honourable Kim Maslin, Minister of Public Works, regarding the cost share program for paving subdivision or J-class streets for the fiscal year coming up in 2024-25. Do councillors have any questions or comments about that item on the agenda? Councillor?
It's just sad. That's all. Getting rejected is sad.
Yes, it is. Yeah. So unfortunately, our project did not proceed, but we can always try again in future years. We'll keep trying. So, all right. The next item on the agenda is the review of the action items. Are there any questions? Sorry, are there any questions regarding the review of the action items? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to items added to the agenda, and this item is streetlights. So over to you, Councillor Digdon. I believe you wanted to.
I do. So I just first of all, I'll apologize to the CEO for not sending him off an email very quick, or to our Director of Public Works. But I'm not sure what our next step is. I know Chris made several attempts to NSP and for streetlights, and it's been probably going close to a year. And when I say several, I mean probably up towards 4. So I'm not sure what the next step is. I don't know if it's a letter from council to NSP, or if I can send Chris off another reminder maybe to reach back out. I really don't know.
Is this regarding a specific streetlight, or just streetlights in general?
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
New installs, 3 new installs.
There was 3 new installs for almost a year, and then
Press your button.
sorry, there was 3 new installs for probably the last year. I know there's some in other districts that he had also sent off, and they're not getting replied to. Or
Okay, and I do know there have been some serious lags in time between the orders going in and when the streetlights are, even scoped out, let alone implemented. So I do know there seems to be some untimely delays. Councillor Sampson, I believe you had a question.
So I've experienced some similar instances. Some of the streetlights are going in very quickly, and some of them have required a little more persistence. So my advice to Councillor is, and I hate every time I email Carla to say, hey, have we heard anything? So also maybe what you don't know is that when they put in the request for the street lights, which I found this out more than recently, they don't get a confirmation that it's actually been done. So unless you continue to tell them it's not being done, they would not hound NSP about it because they don't know it didn't happen. So what I have found is that persistence has been, because if you push, they just keep pushing it up. And the message I got from people in different places was that the persistence is the answer to that. So it's just unfortunate. I think what happens is every time they just get their feet underneath them, then another instance happens and they're buried in work, and then people take time off and then they're buried again. So I think it's been a little bit of that.
Thank you, Councillor Melanie Sampson. So, Councillor Digdon, at this stage, I guess I would just encourage some follow-up, maybe reconnect back with staff, and let's just monitor the situation. And if we see that, progress is not being made in the next, month or so, then perhaps we could, look at writing a letter. And I'm happy to add my voice to that. I know sometimes the squeaky wheel gets the grease, right? So, is that satisfy your item? Okay. Perfect, thank you. So we're going to move to the next item on the agenda, which is question period, and this will be restricted to the remainder of the agenda items following the committee reports. For folks watching at home, the number to call is 902-226-9885. That's 902-226-9885. And of course, if members of the gallery have questions, welcome. And it looks like Mr. Cotton, you have a question for us this evening, so over to you.
Actually, not a question so much as a housekeeping item. I know it used to be that when your financial statements were approved, they have to be sent to the minister, but I didn't catch them. I know you talked about it, but I didn't hear a motion to approve the financial statements.
Yeah, it was, Mr. Cotton, it was in the audit committee report. It was embedded in the report, which is why I started to say after the presentation, I think we need a motion, but it's actually in the audit committee report. Yeah. Yeah, thank you. Sure, of course. Thank you. Yeah, that's right. We're trying to stay on track, so, okay. So we'll just give it another couple of minutes, and if there are folks at home who have questions. Okay, folks, I'm not hearing any questions coming in by phone, and I don't believe there are any other members from the gallery who have questions, so we will adjourn the meeting since there is no additional business on our agenda this evening. So thank you very much for being here, and thanks to folks at home for watching.